I'd like to officially call to order the October 18th, 2022 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. And pursuant to the extension of Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this public meeting of the Town of Bolton Conservation Commission is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but the public can access this meeting while in progress by Zoom Video Communications, Inc. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by telephone, cell phone, or personal computer using Zoom. And just some guidelines on Zoom, please use the chat or utilize or raise hand function if you want to be addressed by the board. People will remain on mute until they're actually called on by the board, and participants are required to display their first and last names. That said, by tradition, we'll start with a roll call. I am Brian Barabee.
Paul Bramwell.
Bill Payne.
Jim Garrity.
A long ball.
Excellent. Okay. All right. First up this evening. All right, the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing to consider a notice of intent under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, submitted by Allen and Major Associates, Inc. on behalf of Jim Lambert of Limited Dividend Affiliate of WP East Acquisitions, LLC, the proposed multifamily residential development located off Main Street, currently at 580 Main Street, for a total of 229 residential units on 32.4 acres, including construction of 4 3-story residential buildings, a clubhouse, a mail center, an access road, parking areas, amenities, and all supporting site features and infrastructure required to support the proposed development. The project is proposed to be serviced by private drinking water supply wells, private on-site wastewater treatment system, and private underground utilities consisting of electrical service and underground telecommunications, cable services from various utility companies. Portions of the site development will fall within currently fall within jurisdictional resources. The project located on map 4.C parcel 24. Rebecca, do we have well, as I say, are either of the applicants here, any of the applicants here this evening?
Yes,
We're here, Mr.
The
Chairman.
applicant and their representative are present.
Okay. And do you want to give it, or any other commission members want to give an update on where we stand as far as going out for the site visit?
I'm sorry, Brian, did you want me or one of the commission members?
I was gonna say, if one of the commission members want to give an update, that's great. If you're able to give an update, Rebecca, or just trying to bring people up to speed as to where we stand, that would be excellent as well. Sorry, my voice is starting to go this week.
That's okay. So I guess I'll give a summary and then other commission members can jump in on things that I've missed. So we actually did the site visit today, this morning, with both Phil Cordero from Allen Major Associates and Jim Lambert present as well from Wood Partners. And we walked essentially the site. I had to jump out early to get to another meeting. However, I walked basically the southeastern portion of the site, in addition to the area where the second test well was located, along with the proposed pump houses. From that area, what we walked and what we reviewed, the applicant just pointed out physically on the ground where the corner of structures were, the location of proposed remediation areas in terms of compensatory flood storage and wetland restoration areas. Then when we went to the buildings, over at the pump houses, some of the questions were related to the size of those structures. And we clarified that it is to state what is on the plan is the total square footage, and the applicant will be designing within that area. So that was a question by the commission that they had clarified. Another question on site was relative to the building that exists today, and that a portion of that would be being demolished, as we heard at the last meeting, but just physically seeing exactly where that falls on site in relation to the jurisdictional areas. Then we talked about borderland subject to flooding, and the proximity to the existing garage on site, and then the proposed parking area, which also has an infiltration system beneath it. So just understanding where that falls on site in proximity to mean annual high water, riverfront area, BLSF. They also echoed throughout the site visit that they are maintaining the 25-foot no touch based on a request from the ZBA. And that obviously is a positive thing as well when it comes to wetlands jurisdiction, even though the bylaw does not apply. And from there, I don't know if the rest of the commission has any other questions or items to add that either I missed or that I did not recall.
I think you covered it pretty well. I will say after you had to leave, we basically went along the wetland that's basically the fire pond in the back of the proposed building, basically to see where the parking lot would be in the back half of, I think it's building 2 of the 2 buildings, where that parking would actually end, and then what it would look like from between there and basically the what's now called the fire pond. Other commission members, any other parts of that walk that I'm forgetting? I don't think so. I think that's basically everything we kind of took a look at. Do people have any existing questions based upon what we saw in the field or from the last time we had talked about this hearing? Excuse me. All right, not seeing any. It was laid out pretty well in the field from what I can see and from what I can understand. Should ask, are there any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular project? Not seeing any currently. And then Rebecca, I'd ask your thoughts after what we saw in the field. It's a big project to take in. I did read through some of the peer review stuff that was done for I believe it was ZBA. It's fairly comprehensive, but again, there was a lot to take in and a lot of moving parts with this one. But I'd be curious, Rebecca, if you had thoughts or comments after the site visit.
I didn't, other than it just, as site visits do, it just clarified what's on the plans and on the ground. Obviously, there are 2 resource areas that are being filled or proposed to be filled. And I don't know if those areas were just reviewed and the structures going near them, but at the end of the day, they're going to be filled. So it's really, is the commission going to permit that or condition it so that it meets? And they do have proposed replication areas on site. The other item from last meeting was just correcting the BLSF, which that was on some plans that were submitted, that the submittal of those plans did not meet the deadline, but I do just want to note that those have been submitted, and they can be discussed at next meeting if there's any continuation or any additional information necessary. In addition to that, the commission at the last meeting had asked for riverfront area calculations over the entirety of the site, which is helpful in terms of the commission reviewing whether or not the proposed project meets those performance standards under the Wetlands Protection Act. So those have also been provided to my knowledge. Again, not meeting the submittal deadline, but that is something that the commission has the ability to review and then understand the actual extent of alterations on site. So I guess those would really be my primary comments. I think it would be helpful to get more time to review what was just submitted, but I also understand if the commission feels that they've had sufficient time to do so. And that's my thought. It is a very large site. It's a complex project, but the benefit was that the ORAD had been done already. I think the stormwater on site is what I am most concerned with, because as we know, if the stormwater is not handled on site and doesn't get treated appropriately, it's then going to reach the resource area and cause negative impacts that way, or can. And on this site, they have to meet stormwater standards, Massachusetts stormwater standards, and they're required to do the NIPD's permit. So there are a lot of checks and balances. So the commission just needs to ensure that under our review, we're making sure that all the performance standards are met. And the commission should also be aware of areas that are going from pervious to impervious and vice versa, and understanding the implications that that might have.
Thank you. Question on process. Do we have a DEP file number for this? Okay.
Not yet, unless the applicant has heard something within the past couple of hours.
Just to chime in, Phil Cordero from Allen and Major, we haven't heard anything in the last couple of hours with the file number. I'll just fill you in on my conversation with Mia. The only thing holding them up is they have not been able to locate or confirm the first filing fee check. They have cashed it. It's in the DEP account. They just didn't register it. So that's in her opinion, through her words, the last thing that's holding her up.
Okay. Any commission members have any questions after what Rebecca just kind of outlined for us, or her comments and thoughts? All right.
Well, I have one quick one.
Please,
Brian.
Paul. Yes.
I was just curious because there's a lot of parking area there today. Do you know what the difference in square footage for the current parking area versus the new proposed would be? It looks almost like it will be less, but I was just curious.
I don't have that exact number, but it's certainly something I can get for you. We have it in our drainage calculations. I just don't have it at my fingertips.
Okay.
I was going to say, we'll see if there's more questions also, but if we don't have a DEP file number, we really can't move on anything tonight, right? We would need to continue to next meeting, which would give all the commission members a chance to review the stuff that was submitted. I look quickly at it, but I would like to read through it and kind of have a deeper understanding myself. It looks like we're going to have to continue because we don't have a DEP number, so it should give everybody a chance to review all of that information. We'll be able to post it for our next public meeting too. But I would say to commission members, do you have any questions now or any immediate, like what Paul just brought up? If you can find that square footage, Phil, that's something we can discuss at the next meeting. So just kind of have it ready for that. Any other questions that commission members have right now, or anything that would like to see for next meeting?
I do have a question, Brian. There was a report
Please.
from Horsley Witten Group dated February 4th, 2022, which was quite a while ago, with questions regarding the stormwater management. And I was wondering if those questions had been answered. For
Let's see.
example, under standard 1B, Horsley Witten recommends that if feasible, the applicant pull back the outfalls to respect the local 25-foot buffer zone, right? So was that addressed? And standard 2B, Horsley Witten recommends that the applicant revise the models as necessary to ensure the total areas match. So there's quite a few recommended actions that HW was looking for. I was wondering if those were addressed. That's all. And you could probably answer those next meeting too, if you want.
Well, I can answer it here very quickly. So what you're referring to is part of the back and forth that took place with the ZBA. So the initial correspondence recommended, can you pull back some of your discharge points to respect the 25-foot buffer and just do a balancing of some of the areas? If you follow through with the rest of the package, we also provided the Allen and Major responses to those comments and how we addressed them. And then there's a subsequent H&W peer review where they acknowledged receipt of those modifications.
That's what I wanted to see. I'll get to that.
Yep. So it's definitely in there, sir. And one of the things that we talked about a lot today, especially along the boundary of the Great Brook River Water Wetland Resource Area System, is where that 25-foot discussion was really centered around, and we modified the design to accommodate it.
Okay, I'll get to the responses before the next meeting.
There's 2 or 3 letters in there, a couple from Allen and Major, a couple from Horsley Witten. The last one is, of course, from Horsley and Witten, and that's really the only one that matters. which generally denotes their agreement with the design, meeting the stormwater standards, a couple that you have identified, and certainly to your agent's concern about overall stormwater management and how the plan complies.
Yeah, I can see some of it now. Okay.
Brian, one
Yes,
thing I did not mention from the site visit that was brought up was the purpose behind, again, a plan set that was requested that has been submitted but not meeting the deadline, showing the entirety of the site, and the purpose being that you prefer to show the commission the entirety of the site so that they're able to see what limitations may be on site, and then have the applicant speak to an alternative analysis and speaking to why things need to be located the way that they are versus limiting, shifting things out. I will note to the commission that it's not always you have to build out a site to the capacity that it has upland area. And I'm not saying that this site does or does not do that. What I'm expressing is the commission's ability to condition and request the applicant to be shifting things further away from resource areas, or changing materials, or requesting different use of materials so that it reduces the impact to those resource areas. So that can all be incorporated into an alternative analysis, or just details comparing on how things are constructed with what materials. I know on site we talked about the parking area, and I'm just using this as an example. Not saying that the commission feels one way or the other because I'm not sure, but we were talking about the parking area closest within the BLSF, closest to the brook mean annual high water line within the riverfront area. It's currently lawn, but that is an area that's proposed to be asphalt in a paved surface area. That in an instance, the commission could be able to consider other materials. I'm not saying they will, because I know the infiltration system is below it, but that's just something to think about as well. Seeing as I think it sounds like the commission will be requesting a continuance based on the conversations tonight, not having a DEP file number, but that was something else that was brought up at the site visit, and I just wanted to note that.
thank you. Other initial questions? Things you'd like to see if when we continue?
Yeah, just a quick question, Brian. When we talk about the riverfront area, I think it was, I'm going by memory here, 400,000 square feet. And if we take the 10%, we're at 40,000 square feet of allowable alteration. What was the total square footage that this plan alters from a riverfront perspective on that side? Do we have that number, Phil?
We're at about, so there's about 45,000 square feet of it. I'm just taking a look at the note that in the outer riparian zone, 45,000 square feet, plus or minus.
That's how much you're altering.
That's how much it's already altered. So we're re-altering it effectively. So there's no new disturbance within the riverfront for us. It is modification of existing disturbance. And then there's an additional portion that is degraded, and that's the area of the back parking field that's covered by asphalt that meets the definition of degraded. That is being returned to a natural state. So there's sort of an offset in that lower portion.
Okay, thank you.
Phil, what's the square footage of the degraded area?
About 22,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you. And that is included within that 45,000 square feet, or separate from?
Separate from, because
Okay.
it's a conversion from degraded to improved.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Other comments, questions? All right. All right, seeing none. Rebecca, our next meeting, November 1st,
No, November 15th.
1/5. Thank you.
Yes. I will not
and
be here, so
Yeah,
that's why we shifted it.
that makes sense. First open time.
7 o'clock on November 15th. Yep.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 580 Main Street until our next public meeting, Tuesday, November 15th at 7:00 PM. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second,
All right, all those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
We'll see you in a
Alright.
couple of weeks.
Thank
Yep,
you all.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Okay. All right, the Bolton Conservation Commission. Oh, wait, do I have time? Sorry. Oh, perfect. All right, so the Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, to consider a notice of intent for South Bolton Road, proposed Mallard Lane construction of proposed Mallard Lane development consisting of the construction of 8 dwellings that are age restricted and the necessary infrastructure for said dwellings. Does anybody who went out for the site visit or Rebecca want to give a quick update on what we saw out in the field today? All right, Rebecca, would you mind giving a quick rundown of what we saw in the field today?
Sure. So in the field today, similarly, the purpose of a site visit is to go out, see the applicant had staked the infrastructure that's within jurisdictional area on site. And so the commission started at the entrance to the property off of South Bolton Road. We reviewed the wetland that's actually across South Bolton Road, but the buffer obviously crosses towards the entryway. We walked up the existing cart path, construction road, however you would like to term that. And we reviewed the one of the unit locations on the left-hand side with the proposed well, which is inside the buffer. And then on the right-hand side, Jim had pointed out the center line of the driveway. Then we reviewed again on the left-hand side, the basically house box location, unit box location, and proximity to resource area, inclusive of that well location. And then we also looked at the other areas that are not depicted on the plans as within buffer zone, but also looked at those areas. Some of the questions on site were relative to the significant cuts that or grading that needs to be done. But again, those are outside of the buffer zones that are shown on the plans. In addition to that, we also looked at what is there now and just a little bit about the history of the site itself. So I don't know if anyone wants to add anything else.
I was to say, I don't know that I have anything to add to that. Do you have a copy of the plans? Is there any way to put up a copy of those plans up on screen?
Yes, I can grab them in just a moment. Everybody see the plans?
Yes, I can. All right.
So again, what I was describing was, if you can see my mouse, this is the wetland towards the left of your screen, and I believe it's the north of the parcel itself. Then we walked in, we looked at unit 1, we looked at the basin area here at the front of the lot, which was described to tie into the existing drainage that was installed as part of the Department of Public Works project for drainage along South Bolton Road. We entered into the property and then we reviewed the well location for unit, I think it's 8 and 7. And as you can see, those are within what's depicted on the plans as buffer zone. And then we looked at the remainder of the lot and just noted along with unit 1, it was clarified that the tree line was to be kept adjacent to the resource area as proposed, which is helpful. And the same for the majority of the back lots as well.
Right, and I was gonna say, notice on the plans we had in the field, it might not be on these, it was showing where the individual gas tanks for each unit were to be buried. Thank you for looking.
Yeah, that one shows it right there.
Yeah,
This one does.
I wasn't sure if it was going through on your side as well, so thank you.
So, and I had this question in the field, Jim, and I'm not sure if we can, what the answer to it might be, but I could see that one of the gas tanks, I believe it's for a house, is that 8, is actually buried within the buffer coming off of the vernal pool. And it was questioned, could that be located somewhere else, buried someplace not in the buffer zone? Thank you, Rebecca.
Yes, that one can be moved.
Okay.
What we would want to do is not prevent some type of crossing with utilities. But if you look at the area just on the other side of the guardrail, outside the buffer, yeah, right in there, that would be a good location. It just has to be 10 feet off the structure and 10 feet off the property line, according to the fire department. So the property line is several feet, more like 40 feet away. And then it would just have to be 10 feet off the corner of that structure, but it could go right in there.
Okay. And behind that tank, I'm looking on this map, it looks like that's almost riprap. Is that an outflow pipe from the rotary, the central rotary? Yeah, that.
Yeah, that is an outfall area for the treated area known infiltration area B in the center of the cul-de-sac. So that material is going to get gathered, the stormwater would get gathered in, pre-treated and discharged there.
And it's basically just a riprap, and it kind of diffuses down into what is the existing vernal pool right now.
That's correct.
Well, the other question I had, this one in the field, and you were able to answer it, but just for the public hearing, house 7, again, it looks like it goes several feet into the buffer zone. There was a question if that could be moved, and if you could just repeat what you had said in the field as far as trying to adjust where that house might be.
Yes, I can talk about that. When we originally had the layouts were covered by the local fire department, they wanted for firefighting purposes 20 feet between each structure. So that's what pushed that unit 7 back. One of the things we did, we have 2 size units, and that is the thinner unit. So we made that sacrifice also, so we could get the spacing. Some of the other units the other size is larger. So that is the smallest unit that we're offering size wise. We're offering 2 different sizes. So.
Okay. All right, those are some of my initial questions. And this one just looking at the site in general, the size of the site, the fact that it's the 8 houses and where we're working around the vernal pool, and then also the wetland area at the back. This might be a project that I'll let the other commission members weigh in too, where I'd almost want to see a peer review of the project. It kind of goes, I mean, it's some of it's just beyond my scope, and some of these projects, it's almost too much for us to ask Rebecca to try to parse all the different pieces. That's kind of where I might be leaning right now. But I want to open it up to initial questions from commission members. There may be other feelings depending.
Yeah, Brian, I agree. I mean, I looked at the stormwater report, it was, 200 pages plus. And, the pre-development, there was 2 subcatchments, and post-development, there was 16 or 13 subcatchments and 16 ponds. So there's a lot of data there. That's fairly complicated.
Yeah, I mean, it has gone through Horsley Whitman's review, very similar to the project prior. This project's a lot smaller, but, we've gone through many revisions with peer reviewers already. And, they've gone over that. I know it might seem like it's dense. When we started this project, we had 13 units and we reduced them to 8 to reduce the infrastructure, with the recommendations from Horsley Witten, and some of the other town consultants, from Hancock, Joe Pisnoli. So that's where we're at. And I just personally wouldn't see somebody coming up with something different as a peer reviewer. I mean, the town has trusted Horsley and Witten almost with every project. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to disagree with the commission, but I want to stress some concerns I have that saying, the project was peer reviewed already. And it's a former sand and gravel pit, as the commissioners could see today. In the impacts that we're applying, like unit 7 is maybe 4 or 5 feet into a buffer zone of an isolated wetland. Yeah, that is a vernal pool. We've stayed away from it. We've moved the road. There's an existing cart road there. So there's already existing disturbance. We're moving away from there. We're pre-treating all the stormwater to the best degree manageable. We've paid engineers over the last 4 years, a lot of money. This is supposed to be affordable housing and a comprehensive permit. It's pretty involved. Yeah, could there have been something overlooked? Maybe, but I don't think anything major. So that's, as a kind of resident of Bolton and trying to get this thing approved, I would plead with the commission not to do that to me and to this project. And I would say, please look at what we've gone through already. And willingly, we went to every board and commission ahead of time, but we didn't have to. And we took input from the design review board. We taken input from the fire chief, from the police chief, from everybody. And we've literally been at this process for about 3.5 years. Like I said, we've downsized the number of units, what's even allowed by environmental standards by Title V. We're going for very few well variances. This meets a lot of local regulations. As far as what we saw prior to that other project, they talked about they're staying 25 feet away. I don't want to speak out of school, but we're basically 50 feet away from anything. And it's no riverfront here. It's a very small project on a sand and gravel pit that's been peer reviewed already. That's all I would ask of the commission is please consider that.
I would say, Jim, you make a very good point. And when I was going through everything, actually a lot of it yesterday, some of it today, I didn't really note that fact that it has been peer reviewed. I know it is part of the comprehensive process. I didn't look, I was just going through the whole packets of everything Rebecca had sent us. I see that it's in there. I did not see that before, the prior peer review to read through, because again, to some of the groups that we use, I like how they will write things up.
Right.
Again, I will put this out to other commission members, but I think I would become, I might need more time to read through it. As Jim said, some of this stuff can be very dense. And I will say I did not really catch that we had it, even though I should have known that we'd had it just for how this is going through. So I do take your point, and I think I'd be comfortable just kind of with the peer review we currently have. And I would imagine, I know, and usually they'll touch on some of our items. And I would imagine this one does too. I'm not going to try to read it now. But let me put other questions from commission members or thoughts, comments from commission members. All right.
Well, I would say that based on the site visit today, I didn't think this was a very, doesn't seem to be disturbing very much. So if we could have time to read those peer review reports, I think that would be fine for the next step, in my opinion.
All right.
And the other, one last thing I should say.
Go ahead, Jim.
Also is we do have a DEP file number, and there was no comment from DEP on the project.
I was just saying, and you didn't have to go to natural heritage. There was no
No.
endangered species habitat, right? It was just the approval.
No.
Okay. All right. Any members of the public have comments or questions on this particular project? I'm not seeing any right now.
No.
Rebecca, your thoughts and or comments on this particular project?
Sure. I want to just note with the peer review, I acknowledge the fact that there was a peer review. We're not comparing sites to sites, and that's why I think Brian brought up the peer review, is we have to take every project and treat it the same. I think your project is more straightforward than the last project, so I don't even think we're there yet in terms of contemplating whether a peer review is necessary or not. But we're talking about this project in front of the commission right now, the Mallard Lane proposed project, to be clear. In addition to that, regardless of what ZBA has done for the peer review, which did not include the Wetlands Protection Act review, they did try to include some of that within, but they understand, as we do with their peer review information, that it's two separate jurisdictions. They were reviewing it relative to the bylaw only. And yes, some of that does translate, as we all know. However, that is the reason why they focus on the bylaw, is because that's their purview at that time. The Wetlands Protection Act still applies, and therefore it may constitute another peer review. I'm not saying it is necessary for this, but I'm saying it's two separate things. They can inform one another. The commission definitely wants to review that, it sounds like, which is great. And I think that's a really good step in the right direction. But that does not, as you heard at the first meeting, the last hearing was, they had asked if the commission wanted to consider waiving that the same way you are. And the commission said, no, we need to finish reviewing the information. So they have to treat every project the same in terms of how we approach it. Now for my comments specific to this project, I do appreciate that you have been working to move things outside of jurisdictional areas for the most part, but you do still have the roadway, you do have the outfall, you do have a couple wells within buffer zone. Now, my question is, when we talked about moving the gas tank, I think that's really helpful and a good step in the right direction. When we were on site, I guess I misunderstood what you said, Jim, because I thought on 7, understanding the setbacks required by public safety departments to keep it 20 feet apart. But I thought that you were saying you could move it forward and it would still maintain the 20 feet, but you're saying, so I misunderstood that. You're saying, no, you can't move 7 forward.
No, you can't, because what happens is everything starts to slide and we can't lose the parking that we have in front of the garage. That was a zoning board was talking about that,
Okay.
the driveways have to stay 20 feet and 24 feet in length or thereabouts. So people can park in front of the garage and not drop out onto the street.
Sure. Thank you for clarifying that. So my other question is, do you have the ability to move? I'm going to try and highlight it. To have this, I apologize, maybe it won't work. The outfall, instead of going towards, can you push it out to flare this way? Just,
Well,
I'm looking
you're
at,
off the property there.
where am I off the property?
Like the property line is right there.
Yep.
So
So
that
what
unit
I'm-
8 is 20 feet off the property line. That's why it turns and
Okay,
goes kind
thank
of
you.
down gradient behind unit 8.
Okay, thank you. So what I'm asking is, can we have the outfall be at this point instead of having another elbow? Or what is requiring this to be this long and that far into the buffer zone?
We could probably turn it.
I'm just thinking of moving things into the upland area so it has more time to basically infiltrate and filter across a vegetated surface instead of already being 75 feet in. And then I think you have some grading here, that hatch line. So you're already getting that water coming down as well. So is there a way to sort of break it up a little bit more?
Yeah, I think maybe that the discharge point can be moved to the manhole area. That storm drain right off the back, right corner of unit 8. Yes, right there.
And that's, I mean, that's one of the items that I saw as something that could potentially be pulled out and further away. But like right off the bat, and then in addition to that, the infiltration basin, but it's across the road from the resource area and it's it's proposed in an upland area. It's within the outer 100-foot. And then it's just really the roadway, the infrastructure within the roadway itself. But you're proposing a guardrail. What about the stabilization or plantings along that slope?
Yes, they
So
would.
adjacent to the guardrail.
Yeah, we were going to use an approved kind of blanket method for the stabilization and then put plants on top of that.
Okay. Okay, and that's the same for all of this
the
hatching that you
stabilization
see?
slopes. That's what was mentioned to the ZBA.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
I just had one question for
Go ahead,
Rebecca,
Jim.
actually. So that little, getting into this a little bit. So Rebecca, I know that what I call the air wing wetland, it's kind of isolated, very small. You feel that that's jurisdictional under the DEP Wetlands Protection Act?
I'm not claiming jurisdiction over it because we haven't had a review of the resource areas in terms of jurisdiction. So what you've submitted, the commission can certainly make a determination on, but I'm going by how you have it on your plans, and on your plans, you have a 100-foot wetland buffer associated
Right,
with
and
it.
I
And I
was
think you
trying to.
did that conservatively, according to your plans, but if you're asking for the commission to determine jurisdiction or not, that the commission might end up doing a peer review on, versus the stormwater where you already have stormwater peer review from Horsley and Witten, and that does pretty much parallel the Wetlands Protection Act as well, because you're meeting similar standards. But I personally, singularly, am not going to determine whether something's jurisdictional or not. That's something for the commission to decide. I am purely interpreting what you have annotated on your plans here.
No, and I appreciate that answer. What I was just getting at is trying to explain to the commission that, throughout this whole project in the 3.5 years, I've been very, very conservative. So, and I have not pushed strongly in any direction towards any of those, either they're jurisdictional or not jurisdictional areas, and I just want to get that out to the commission that I've taken a serious look at what I could do to make this to be able to build the project, but make it the best project it can be as far as the conservation goes.
It's noted. All right. So I guess Jim, what I'm saying, would it be possible for you to kind of draw in some of those changes we mentioned tonight, the moving of the tank and maybe a different place for the outflow of that runoff. In the interim, for commission members to read through the peer review, which again, I'm sorry, I recognize we do have, and as Rebecca said, we do reserve the right because sometimes it doesn't touch on everything that we
Right.
need it or want it to touch on. A lot of what I kind of wanted to see it for was stormwater management and stormwater review from some of the things I saw on site, especially up by the roadway, which I think it does touch on and talk about it. Again, I was kind of trying to skim it a little bit as we were talking, but I kind of went through that. Would you be all right if we continue to chill our next meeting to give us a chance just to review through that and to put those small changes on the plans that we had discussed this evening?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Other commission members, anything else, any other questions, things you'd like to see or anything for next meeting other than what I basically just walked through? Okay. All right. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for, I'm sorry. Continue the public hearing for South Bolton Road, map 2.C parcel 15.1 until our next public hearing, Tuesday, November 15th at 7:15 p.m. Do I hear a second for
Ryan,
continuing?
can I suggest 7:20 again, just so we have enough time?
You definitely can. I was thinking about that, and I was gonna say usually that first one will run long enough. I hate when we have to wait, but sure. So strike all that. I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for South Bolton Road map 2.C parcel 15.1 until our next public hearing, Tuesday, November 15th at 7:20 p.m. Do I hear a second for continuing?
Second.
Sec-
All those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right.
Hey, thank you,
Thank you.
guys. Have a good night.
All right. Take care. Let's move on. All right. So, excuse me. The Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue a public hearing for under Mass General Law, Chapter 131 and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a request for determination of applicability for 8 South Bolton Road. Rebecca, do we have an update on this?
We do. So there was an issue with when I had scheduled the site visits. This was the only one that had kicked back in my spam. So I had to quickly schedule that, and myself and Jim were able to make it out on site today before the Mallard Lane site visit. And the deck that is being proposed, there's approximately 4 footings, 2 for the stairway, 2 for the deck itself. Then it will be attached to the existing home. It is in the adjacent upland resource area, but it's directly above. And I do have pictures. I apologize, I didn't send them via email prior, but there's essentially a garage-like entrance that goes into the back of the house over lawn. It's not paved, but this deck would essentially go above that. So there would still be a passable area under the deck. And in addition to that, there's a shed type garage structure that's been there since probably the construction of the home originally, which I do not have the date in front of me right now. But this deck is further away from that and attached to the home itself. So it's over a lawn area. It's not even taking up to that existing structure either. So I personally did not have an issue with essentially the 4 footings, which would be the alteration within that area, because you're taking lawn, which is a landscaped area. It does have some gardens there as well, or minimal gardens, along with a stone wall associated with the entryway to that garage-like entrance at the back of the home. So it's over an area that's fairly maintained and already altered. Jim, I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I think you got it. I mean, I didn't bring my tape measure. I should have, but I didn't. I forgot. But I just going on Mapper and kind of trying to do some calculations. I do think it's still outside of the 25-foot no touch zone as well.
Sorry. We're looking at the RDA as it stands now. Are there any of our normal conditions that would be missing? I'm not being on the site. I don't know if there's any like erosion controls that need to be in place. Is there stockpiling instructions? If there's a set area or an area that we think we should really avoid?
So I think definitely stockpiling can occur, or you can request it to occur within the paved area on site. So basically their driveway, which is minimal due to the resource areas on site, but I think that would be beneficial. I think in addition to that, you do have 4 footings, so you do have alteration of the ground in the soil. So I think just for limited work purposes and whatever may occur when those are installed regarding any material, I think using a wattle in that area to just establish the limit of work would be helpful between obviously the deck and the resource area.
Okay. Other commission members have any questions or comments? Excuse me. Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular project? I'm not seeing any. Excuse me. That said, sorry, just trying to read my own notes. Saying, unless a commission member sees a reason why not, I'll probably make a motion to close this hearing and let us vote. Okay. In that case, I'm going to make a motion that we close the public hearing for request for determination of applicability for 8 South Bolton Road. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All right. All those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well. Excuse me. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we have that we issue a -3 determination for 8 South Bolton Road with the following conditions. That any stockpiling of materials be limited to the existing driveway or paved area. And that a straw wattle be placed between the deck and the resource area to basically determine limit of work and to prevent any soil migration during the drilling and setting of footings for said deck. All those, well, yeah. Do I hear a second for the -3 determination with conditions?
I second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. Now, do we have- Right. What time is it? All right. The Bolton Conservation Commission will now open the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a request for determination of applicability for 223 Green Road. Rebecca, is the applicant or a representative for the applicant here this evening?
They are present. If
I
you
am,
want,
yes. Hello.
oh, they're there. Hi. We have
Hi.
Rob Frost present, who is the property owner and resident located at 223 Green Road.
Rob, if possible, could you kind of give us a quick summary of what you're proposing to do?
Sure. So my property is like a lot in Bolton, it's very unique. There isn't really a good location for a shed that doesn't eat up the limited usable lawn that we have, you know, unless it's going to be like in the front yard or something. And so off of the back left corner of our house within the grass perimeter, we would like to put a gravel bed and a 18 by 10 shed on top of it. The shed is 173 feet from a vernal pool, a small salamander vernal pool in the corner of our property in Green Road. And I believe close to 75 feet from the septic system and around 60 feet from the house. And so it's close to the tree line, the sort of the vegetation line facing the where the vernal pool ends up being, sort of 173 feet away, but through trees and what seems to be wetland vegetation, types of vegetation.
Any commission members have initial questions or comments? And just Rebecca, have you had a chance to go out to this site at all? Do you have any questions, comments?
I do. Well, I did get a chance to go out to the site, is what I meant.
Okay.
This was prompted by a building permit, as some of them are. I did notice the vernal pool. Sometimes on sites with vernal pools, you actually have a slightly higher area in elevation, very minor change, in which that surrounding area has the bordering vegetated wetland vegetation and characteristics that then show to be jurisdictional. So that's why on sites like this, I do request a site visit. While on site, I did note that that was the case. However, to Rob's point, the area that they're looking to put the shed is currently lawn. And in that as well, they had been working on a stone wall. So what I had suggested was it may be helpful if the commission were to consider this and approve the shed placement, it may be helpful for him to line the existing lawn area with the boulders to continue the existing wall that he's creating, but also establish a limit of work in perpetuity, basically. And although you don't typically do that through an RDA, I think in this case, it would be helpful, seeing as he's looking to put that shed in place relatively close to the wood line. But again, just to ensure that that limit of work is established by the commission.
Do we have any kind of design and or map just to see?
Yes, I think I do. Let me pull that up.
Yeah, okay.
So the overlays are not deciding to show up. They're being a little delayed, but here is his existing home. If you can see my mouse, he's on a common driveway that comes in here. His driveway terminus here. What they've cleared is an area just to the southwest of the home, and that's where the boulder wall is along currently. And then the lawn area in here, there is an area where they're proposing to put the shed. So what I had suggested on site that the commission might consider as part of this as well is to continue that boulder wall. If you'd like, I can go out and review the location of it. There we go. And just ensure that it's along that 100-foot buffer so that Rob in the future knows that there's a memorialized area. So here's the vernal pool. You could see it probably in the tree line break when this didn't come up. Then you have BVW. This actually extends slightly further, and then you have your 100-foot buffer. But again, the lawn has been established for some time now within that adjacent upland resource area. But the wetland vegetation does creep up a little bit more.
All right. So the map helps. Normally, I'd say something like this. I'd like to kind of do a site visit to kind of get out and see exactly where it is. But I think the map kind of does help, but I'd also like a chance to kind of sketch out the wording that you're talking about, Rebecca, as far as memorializing that limit of work. And the right way to kind of write that into an RDA. I'm just curious, originally, what other commission members think. Is this something you're comfortable with through the plans? Is this something you think you'd like to see in site? Are you seeing, picturing, envisioning the project as it's being described? Excuse me.
Yeah, I can kind of see what Rob's trying to do here, Brian.
All right. Anyone else have strong thoughts, feelings, one way or the other?
I don't think a site visit is necessarily necessary, but I'm open.
Okay. And again, the map helps. I can kind of see, especially if it's going on currently maintained an existing lawn. It looks like you're doing gravel fill, so it's not a impervious surface, right? It's still going to be pervious surface underneath the shed. Rebecca, what's the topography look like? Is it relatively flattish at that point?
Yeah, yes. So around this area of the home, it's relatively steep and then drops gradually behind the home.
Yeah.
And then towards the probably about 50 feet off the relative toe of that slope is where they're proposing to put the shed. And then it gradually, very slightly tapers off at that point into where you start seeing the vegetation.
Okay. If we were to issue a determination, I'm just trying to think of good language for maintaining that limit of work or building out that wall and or boulders to memorialize a limit of work. Sir,
I think you could say memorialize the limit of work utilizing boulders on site to be approved by the conservation agent.
okay.
And then that allows us to get out on site, finalize where the shed's gonna go based on what the commission says tonight. And then from there, establish where that boulder wall is to go.
Okay. And then the same, I mean, if they're gonna, I'm not worried about too many materials coming in. I would imagine we could, if we conditioned the stockpiling of materials to existing lawn area, that should give them plenty of room to work without going too far back into the buffer zone. It looks like a lot of that is, you start getting into the tree line.
Yep.
Is there anything else not currently on the RDA, which would be kind of within our standard conditions?
You could say erosion control, but I don't, in terms of establishing the limit of work, but where you're proposing the boulder wall, I don't know that that's necessary. There's not going to be ground disturbance in that sense. And there's also, it's such a gradual slope. If that, at that point, I don't see it serving a purpose, but that's certainly another typical condition that you use that you're able to use.
Yeah, and I was to say, that's when we can usually figure out in the field whether it might need it or not. It kind of wouldn't, just by what I'm seeing. All right. Other commission members have thoughts on conditions or anything that we would need to add if we were to try to condition this evening? All right, and I'm not seeing any. And you'll excuse me, we have chinchillas in the room with them. They're the ones who are kind of banging on a cage right now. If I'm going in and out, or if you hear annoying noises in the background, I do apologize. So all that said, I'd like to make a motion that we, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for 223 Green Road. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second,
All those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well. Excuse me one second. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we have a -3 determination for the request determination, that we have a -3 finding for the request for determination of applicability for 223 Green Road with the following conditions. That the limit of work be memorialized by using rocks and or boulders from on site in a line approved by the conservation agent. And also that any stockpiling of materials be kept to existing lawn areas. Yeah. Do I hear a second for that determination with those conditions?
I second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. We have time. All right. All right, so the Bolton Conservation Commission will now open the public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider an after-the-fact notice of intent for 427 Sugar Road, the repair of a dam spillway. Dam spillway. Can we get an either from the applicant or one of the applicant's reps? Could we get a quick overview of what you're proposing, or a little history of what's going on here?
Yeah, we can do an overview of what has happened. The property at 472 Sugar Road incorporates part of the small pond, which is obvious on the map there. And there's a dam that blocks the end of the pond, which keeps the pond level up, obviously, which is on our property. So late this summer, as the drought was continuing and the pond level had gone very, very far down, while examining the dam, I noticed that a number of the boards were rotten through and through, and one of the boards is actually broken in the middle. The only thing that was holding it together was a very thin piece of pipe that's also rusted. So I worked with a local contractor to secure some untreated white oak logs that were cut to the same exact size as the existing logs that were rotting, and then worked to make a temporary cofferdam and remove the old logs and then drop the new logs in place in the existing channel, and then took care of the leftovers. So that was about it. Essentially, I wanted to keep the pond because I think it's an important feature, and also it's clearly an important feature for wildlife. We have a great blue heron who comes by every afternoon, at least when there's enough water in the pond, he does. So are there other questions about that?
No, well, I might bug Rebecca with a question, but I should add to that members of the commission, myself included, were able to actually take a look at this project when we were on site looking into another hearing. And from my view on site, I can confirm what the applicant's saying as far as the boards on the existing spillway were rotting and definitely within need of replacement. But that said, Rebecca, do you have any further comments or thoughts on this project and how
Yes.
where it stands now? Basically, the completion of the repair and the removal of any of the rotten or leftover pieces, basically.
Yes, just to clarify as well, so this was more of an administrative enforcement order, which allowed for Shane to repair the, or continue to do the repair. And then in addition to that, part of it was required a notice of intent that listed everything, what materials were used and how. So I have another comment based on that wasn't mentioned is there was no vegetation removal as part of that as well. So that's just something I want to note for the commission. And as Brian stated, we did observe that on site as well. The question I have, and just Shane, it's very quick. Can you just confirm that the cofferdam has since been removed?
Oh, yes, the cofferdam has been removed and I've either disposed of or taken apart the various boards that I'll use for other projects. So no, that's absolutely gone because it was ugly and it's kind of nice to sit there now and watch the frogs under the spillway and listen to the water going over. So, and the good news is that with the recent rain, the pond is now back up to a normal level and is virtually at the top of what the spillway level is. So that's actually really nice to see.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I have no further questions at this time, Brian.
Okay. I just have administrative questions for Rebecca. Would we be, I'm sorry, issuing a notice of or issuing an order of conditions or would we?
Technically,
So-
yes.
Okay.
We have to go through that process. So we issue the order. You can accept the notice of intent as drafted.
Yep.
And then that essentially issues the order, approving the work and just noting that. And then in addition to that, you can also consider a request for COC at the next meeting. I don't know if we can do it all in one meeting for an after the fact notice of intent. So I would suggest at the next meeting, but essentially you're issuing closing out because of the way it was done.
Okay. And does that make sense to all the other commission members? Any questions, comments, thoughts, or understanding of process? Okay. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for 427 Sugar Road. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well. And I'd like to make a motion that we issue an order of conditions for 427 Sugar Road as drafted and submitted at this evening's meeting. Do I hear a second for that?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Great. So the other, now that we've done that, I would actually ask the commission if they want, or ask the commission to ask the applicant if they wish. You can also choose to leave it open so that if there's another repair to a board, you can just do that repair under the order of conditions for the next 3 years, because an order of conditions is good for 3 years. Or we can certainly close it out next meeting, and then it's, if it happens again, which you're using oak, it should last for a decent amount of time. I'm sure more than 3 years, but that's just another option as well.
So thanks to the commission for all the work and apologies if all the paperwork I was doing wasn't clear because I'm new at all this, coming recently, having brought property in Bolton. It sounds like it's better to close it out if practical, just because I don't expect to change anything. I certainly hope to not change anything until the oak itself is starting to wear. So I don't see a need to leave it open.
That's fine. I
Fine.
just am offering that as well.
Right.
So Brian, just to note, I will put that on the next meeting just as a closeout.
Yeah, yep. And I'm fine with that. I was gonna say, that would make sense to me. It makes sense that, like you said, if you think you're gonna be working on it within the next 3 years, but if not, and if for some reason you need to 2 years from now, you can always come back and put in for another order. Okay, but we closed and voted on, right? Okay. So moving on, how am I on time? Oh, good. So the Bolton Conservation Commission will now open a public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a request for determination of applicability for the Wilder Conservation Area off of Main Street, the proposed placement of wood chips throughout an existing trail. Rebecca, are you speaking to this tonight, or do we have someone else who is speaking to this particular project tonight?
I am, and technically I spoke to it at the last meeting, just
Yep.
but a very brief follow-up from last meeting is previously the commission had approved the use of wood chips on the conservation property in an upland area associated with Wilder Conservation Area just off of the new Tadmore development. However, the ask came from the Bolton Trails Committee that since we may have a surplus of that material, can we then use it throughout and within the existing trail footprint, but in areas, for instance, on the Wilder Conservation Area where it falls between two vernal pools. And again, there's an upland stretch, but two vernal pools means it's within the vernal pool habitat area. So just making sure that the commission is comfortable with that or not, and understanding what the parameters might be to using the wood chips throughout the existing trail.
I mean, I know I was comfortable with it as it's proposed, but I'll open it up to other commission members if you have questions, comments, thoughts. Not seeing any. Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? Again, I'm not seeing any. Rebecca, could you remind me of our determinations? What the -5 determination is? Do we have? I believe we have a determination that says yes, it's jurisdictional, but the work proposed is either minimal or an improvement.
I believe that is a -5, Brian, but I can pull that up quick to double check.
I should just have these.
I normally
should
have a
this
copy
file
with
just
me.
a little bit.
Just taking a moment, sorry.
No, I'm looking
still,
for. Again, I should save it somewhere.
I'm still unmuted, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
at least I can hear you.
Okay, great. So we have under the negative determinations, the -5 is the area described in the request is subject to protection under the Act since the work described therein meets the requirements for the following exemption as specified in the Act and the regulations. No notice of intent is required. Then we have, it wouldn't be 4. -2 is the work described in the request is within an area subject to protection under the act, but will not remove, fill, dredge, or alter that area. Therefore, said work does not require the filing of a notice of intent. Or you have the -3. And then, so in this case, you could do a -2 or a negative. I guess you could do a -5.
I'm trying,
And
like,
it
I
could be
want to say we've
considered
used,
under one of the minor.
I think we've used 5 in the past for similar type projects.
Yep.
I just want to make sure it doesn't limit us, but we basically still say yes, it's jurisdictional, but
Right.
and I think 5 covers that. Think.
Yep.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for the Wilder Conservation Area off Main Street, the proposed placement of wood chips throughout the existing trail. Do I hear a second for closing this? Yeah. Anyone want a second closing it?
Second,
All right. All those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
aye,
and Rebecca, I am an aye as well.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion that we have a finding of that we find a -5 determination for the request for determination of applicability for the Wilder Conservation Area off of Main Street, proposed placement of wood chips throughout the existing trail. Do I hear a second for that?
A second.
All those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
aye,
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. So the Bolton Conservation Commission will now open a public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a request for determination of applicability for the Fifeshire Conservation Area located off Wattaquatic Hill Road. The proposed replacement of, I believe, 4 sonotube fittings within the existing footprint of the crossing. Again, this is one that we basically went through last time. The need for it, existing project. As it is kind of submitted, I don't have any additional questions or comments regarding this one. Do other members of the commission have any comments or questions regarding the Fifeshire Conservation Area and redoing the sonotubes for that bridge? Not seeing any. Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular hearing? Yeah, I'm not seeing any. Rebecca, any updates since the last time or any changes since the last meeting?
The only change is that we actually had a scout go out and repair the boards associated with the crossing. So again, nothing on the altering the surface or the ground in any way, but just making sure that the boards were still up and in place. And they actually expressed interest in potentially working on this aspect of it if it were approved as well. But in terms of change of material or change of what's being proposed, there is none at this time.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for determination of applicability for the Fifeshire Conservation Area off of Wattaquatic Hill Road, the proposed replacement of the 4 sonotube footings. Do I hear a second for closing?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
aye,
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well. Right. And I'd like to make a motion that we issue a -5 determination for the request for determination of applicability for the Five Shire Conservation Area located off of Wattaquatic Hill Road and the proposed replacement of the four sonotube fittings. Do I hear a second for that?
A second.
All those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
And third in the series. Oh, we actually have a couple more minutes before we can open this one. So say, oh, did people have a chance to read through the October 4th, 2022 minutes? And if so, any edits, corrections, or changes? And if not, does anybody need more time to read through the minutes? Not seeing any. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes for our October 4th, 2022 meeting as drafted and submitted at this evening's meeting. Do I hear a second for that?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca, any of the updates you want to go through, or any of the things we can take out of order that you think?
Sure, I think
Yeah.
the vote consideration, we might be able to take out of order.
Yeah.
So this is something that internally we've been discussing potential renovations to Derby Field and Park area that's behind the elementary school off of Mechanic Street. And in doing so, just in the preliminary discussions we've been having, we're realizing obviously funding is a limitation, as it is with any project. So therefore tonight, so that we continue on that track and I can continue drafting the documents, I would ask that the commission consider a vote in support of submitting an application to the MVP action grant, the park grant, and or the Land Water Conservation Fund grant. And again, at this time, it's just solely that you're supportive of applying to those grants. But when it comes down to the actual project scope, it will come before the commission again. We'll also be obviously putting it before Parks and Rec, Select Board, and the relative parties who have been part of it. And again, the conversations are between myself, Parks and Recreation coordinator, the town administrator, the town secretary, DPW director, and the grounds manager for the school. So we will be bringing it to the boards once we have gotten a little bit beyond just preliminary so that we can understand the scope. But at this time, we just want to make sure that you're supportive of reaching out to these grant programs as potential funders.
That makes sense to me. And I know I definitely support it. But other commission members, comments, questions about this? Strong feelings against it?
No, it's great.
Okay. All right. In that case, I'd like to call a roll call vote of the commission in favor of supporting the submittal of an application to the MVP Program Action Grant, Park Grant, or the Land Wildlife Conservation Fund and or Land Wildlife Conservation Fund grant for the renovations to Derby Field and Park area. All those in favor, please say aye, starting with Paul Brandwald.
Aye.
Bill Payne,
Aye.
Jim Garrity,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I am an aye as well.
Thank you. I appreciate your support on that.
No, I
and
appreciate
as I
your work
said,
on going after those
we-
grants.
Try our best.
I know, I know. It brings us right to 8:30. All right. In that case, the Bolton Conservation Commission, Bolton Conservation Commission will now open the public hearing for a request, open a public hearing under Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and the Bolton Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a request for determination of applicability from the VSC Group for National Grid regarding the placement of. Sorry, I was reading it off your screen.
I'm sorry, Brian.
That's all right. I have it
Hold on
right in
one
front of me.
moment. I have it.
Regarding the replacement and minor relocation of a utility pole near map 3.C parcel 01. Rebecca is the applicant or representative for the applicant here this evening.
Yes, I believe Samantha Walker is here from VSC Group to represent the applicant.
And Samantha, if you would be willing to, could you give us a quick overview of what is being proposed?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. My name is Samantha Walker with BSC Group. I'm presenting this RDA application on behalf of the Massachusetts Electric Company. They are proposing to replace an existing wooden electrical utility pole 3 feet closer to the road along the disturbed road shoulder of Berlin Road. The purpose of the project is to ensure reliable electrical service to the area and to move the pole further from the adjacent wetland boundary. Activities are proposed within the riverfront area, buffer zone to BVW and inland bank, bordering land subject to flooding, and the locally regulated 25-foot no disturbance zone and 75-foot adjacent upland resource area. So essentially, they will be installing the pole 3 feet from where it currently is located, and will auger a hole to a depth of about 6 feet. Where they will directly embed the pole into the ground. Any excavated soils will be used as backfill, and any excess spoils will be removed from the site. The entire process will disturb approximately 4 square feet and will take a couple hours to a day to complete. We will use BMPs, including sediment controls, to avoid impacts to the adjacent resource areas. And so we are submitting this RDA in accordance with the Bolton Wetlands Protection Bylaw and are seeking a negative determination from the Conservation Commission for the work to take place. Thank you.
You're a mute, Brian.
Thank you. Sorry. Any initial questions from members of the commission?
How will you get the equipment to the pole to auger the hole?
The equipment will be staged on that paved surface of the road.
Okay.
The Berlin Road.
Other questions, comments? Any members of the public here tonight to comment on this particular project? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Rebecca, do you have any thoughts and or comments on this particular project?
I don't. It's pretty straightforward and self-explanatory, but for the purposes of clarification for the commission, the old pole will be removed, and so that the pole that you're proposing to install 3 feet further away from the jurisdictional area, that is the only structure that's going to be located there. That old pole will be removed fully.
Yeah. Right. Was it? I was gonna say, is there any erosion controls proposed? But I'm trying to picture exactly where this is on the map. I don't know if we have a map up of where the pole is located. Is it?
I can share my screen, or if you would like.
That would be excellent, Samantha, if you're able to. Rebecca, if you could allow her to.
All right, give me 1 second. Go. Everyone see my map here?
Yes, I can. Yes.
All right, so
Oh.
this anchor obviously isn't to scale. It's just to represent that there will be a little anchor. But the pole is along this roadside here. And then the sediment controls are represented by this
Okay.
red kind of horseshoe shape. And
Right.
the adjacent wetland is in green.
Excellent. All right. I don't think I have any further questions. Any commission members have any further questions? All right, seeing none. I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for request for determination of applicability for the utility pole near map 3.C parcel 01. Do I hear a second for closing?
A second.
All right, all those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well. I'd like to make a motion that we have a finding of a -3 determination for the determination of applicability for the replacement of the utility pole near map 3.C parcel 01 with the following conditions. That erosion controls are in place before the work begins, and that our conservation agent is able to review and approve those erosion control elements before the work begins. Do I hear a second for the -3 determination with those conditions?
Second.
All those in favor, starting with Paul,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right,
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Take care. Rebecca, when you have a moment, are you able to walk us through the other updates on the agenda?
If I unmute myself, yes.
Oops.
So the other updates we have are, again, the Bolton Trails Connectivity Improvement Project. We're still in the, we are in the initiation phase of that. So at this time, I'm still communicating with one of the grant administrators who works for Mass Trails and reviewing the budget and reviewing the scope and seeing if anything has changed or not. And that is all still going in the right direction. So it's just once we receive the contract and once we receive the additional information, we can get started. This is a process. That's why they call it the initiation phase. And this is my first time with this grant program, so it's a learning process as well. But in March, I'll also be attending a Q&A session about the grant and basically the different standards that we have to meet, part of that process. So it's going well. It's just that is the process associated with it. I'm going to skip down to the MVP program and the other opportunities first, and then I'll come back to the Seaport Academy if that's okay. So our current MVP project is the Nashua River Communities Resilient Lands Management Project. Currently, we are in year 2. As I've stated previously, I encourage those who are interested to check out the website, but also year 2, we're doing Lawns and Landscapes Task Group. So on Friday, this coming Friday, October 21st, we will be visiting sites in our partner community of Clinton between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., looking at different sites with the lens of resiliency, whether they are doing something that we feel is at the forefront of how things could be approached facing resiliency, or some landscapes that might need some work or might need some improvement upon management and maintenance approaches. If you're interested in attending those site visits, I encourage you to reach out to myself and our consultant team, and I will be sure to include you on that information. We do welcome the public input, specifically from this board, but also other residents who might be interested in the project. Again, that's Friday between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. There are, I believe, 4 sites, if I'm recalling properly. So even if you can just make it to one, or even provide insight, typically we do film the site visit so that you can at least follow up and hear the summary of them. And then if you provide comments at that time or insights at that time, that would also be appreciated. The other opportunities we still have available are the volunteer land steward position, the open space and recreation plan subcommittee as well. Anyone can email me or contact my office directly for those. I will be putting out, we're still reviewing it at this time, but I will be putting out an open space and recreation plan introductory survey. So it's a very preliminary survey. And at the bottom of that survey, it will also ask if individuals wish to serve on the subcommittee. Again, we anticipate starting this project late December, early January. So the reason it stayed on the agenda is just to make sure that it's a placeholder and to just, as people are reviewing agendas, that they see it as an opportunity as well. But that survey, I hope to have out before Thanksgiving so that individuals can maybe start a conversation that way also. Now back to the Seaport Academy request for rattlesnake conservation area. Seaport Academy is a school, I believe, in Carlisle, and they have asked if they can excavate with hand tools, so small hammer tools, to remove some of the minerals from the quarries of rattlesnake conservation area. That is, I did make them aware that that is prohibited on our rules and regulations. It says prohibited. And then there's a section at the bottom of our rules and regulations that considers prior written permission. And obviously that's subject to the commission's understanding of that. However, I did again make them aware that that's a prohibited use, but rather encourage that we always like to work with schools and classes and to encourage people to visit these properties, but maybe not removing things from the properties. That being said, in terms of the scope of work, in terms of how long they'll be on site, what they're proposing to be removing, I relayed to them that the site is open to the public between sunrise and sunset, so we don't really need to necessarily know how long they'll be there, but rather how much they're proposing to remove, just so I could relay that properly to you all. And what they stated was there's only a couple students. They originally said, I think 8 at most, and now I think they've broken it down to less than 5. And just using a hand hammer and however much they might be able to get from that during the couple hours that they were there. So I wasn't given an exact amount, and it didn't seem as though they had the ability to quantify what they're proposing to do. But all of that aside, we have made a very focused effort on deterring people from removing material from the quarries over the past couple of years. It seems that the collection of minerals and various rocks from these areas has increased, whether it be because people were stuck at home or not, I'm not sure. But we explicitly put up signage, and myself and one of the residents and our volunteers has made an effort to actually be communicating to people we see either carrying out that excavation or just communicating to people who are within that area, climbing on the quarry walls, to just remind them that those are resource areas that are preserved as part of that conservation restriction in land. So that being said, again, the request is for the Seaport Academy to come, or this class and a couple students from the Seaport Academy to come and remove some of the minerals from the property. And I did not feel that not bringing it before you would be appropriate. So I am providing you with the information and letting you make that determination. Either way, I am happy to relay whatever decision you make to them.
Thank you. Yeah, everything you said kind of jives with how I remember it. I know we have had issues with people quarrying the rocks. We've tried to stop that. As you said, we have made allowances for educational forays into some of the conservation areas. I think you asked the big question, Rebecca. I was curious, like, how much rock are they trying to remove? You know, if it's one small sample for study, and, you know, you get one class every other year that wants a really small sample, I could see that. Depending on what they're bringing out, if this is something they want to bring a class back every year, I think we'd stick with the avoid any quarrying or removing of materials from this site. And you know, and again, it breaks my heart too, because it's difficult that some people do it without asking, or people that have been told not to do it have probably done it anyways. But I just would hate for us to keep letting it get chipped away at. Again, depending on how much they were looking to remove, I could absolutely see it. As you said, I love working with the schools. I can see how this would be a project of interest. If it was a small enough sample, I'd be fine with it, but it's kind of hard to limit it to that. I find But I'm curious what other commission members think.
Do we have any prior experience with this type of requests?
I did look into that, and it has not been allowed, or essentially it was relayed the same way I'm relaying it to you and had relayed it to them. And then they actually pulled back the request and said, oh, we might come back next year with the same request, and never did. So that's typically been, it's never been permitted to my understanding. To my understanding, there is a, I forget if it's a mineral society or a geological society that has come and has provided insights into what is there, but I do not believe that they removed the material and took it with them. They may have removed it and left it on site.
Do you know why they wanted to go here to do this?
Well, I'm not surprised because we do have a couple quarries within that property, but also there's over 30 minerals within the geology that exists within that conservation property. So I can imagine it's because of that aspect, and it's also featured when you look at maps with that are highlighted as quarries within the area on various maps that you can find online. That is certainly an area that, because of the mineral content that's there, it's a heightened area of interest at times. And that's why we see people coming in to harvest, not to harvest, but to remove some of the material. And that's why we had to put up signage, because it became a little bit too popular.
So the precedent says we've said no, and if we start saying yes, who knows what might happen. Right.
So I'd be tempted to stick with that. Again, we've generally been telling everybody not to quarry these areas. But I would say, Rebecca, if, you know, and again, I know it's very hard for them to describe, if we had a really good idea on the size of a sample they'd be looking to take total, you know, for education. And again, you know, if you know, if this was the part of the classroom every year, it might be tough. If it's once every 2 or 3 years, they come out here and they're chipping out one stone, you know, for educational purposes, might be kind of fine with that. But in general, I don't think it's something we'd be looking to approve at this time.
Okay. Thank you for your feedback on that.
No, thank you. It looks like you got through the updates. Are there any other new business or any interesting mail that's come in the last couple weeks?
Not really. We did actually, one of the regional coordinators for MVP went to the MACC conference and actually had picked up the fall conference, and had picked up some of the DCR material talking about forests, edible woodlands, or creating an edible forest basically in your residential space. And then in addition to that, creating some forest management standards in your own backyard. So really looking at small scale residential properties. And she had provided that to us because she's our regional coordinator and had been reviewing some of our material for our forest management guides that we're producing. So that was interesting, and I welcome you to review that as well for your own knowledge, but also as we manage over 2,000 acres within the town, I think it's helpful to understand other opportunities as well when we talk about native plantings. What other benefits might they provide? But that was exciting to me, but and I'm very willing, like I said, to share if individuals are interested in that information.
Thank you. Any commission members have any new business or anything they just want to get off their chest? Seeing none.
A picture of my rattlesnake.
Oh, very nice.
You guys are talking about rattlesnakes. I showed you a picture.
Thanks, Bill.
I see them
So,
everywhere. I've seen 4 of them.
Wow.
At least I was going to say you see him, which is good. And again, a special thank you to Bill Payne for calling in tonight. Appreciate you getting us to quorum from the other side of the country. Going above and beyond as always. All right. So, but all that said, I'd like to make a final motion that we hereby adjourn the Tuesday, October 18, 2022 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. Do I hear a second for adjourning?
Second,
All right. All those in favor, starting with Paul,
aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and Rebecca, I'm an aye as well.
Wonderful. Thank you.